OECD raises 2025 global growth forecast to 3.2%. Russia proposes VAT hike to 22% to fund military spending. And Iran and Russia sign nuclear power plant cooperation deal. Welcome to our new economic bulletin. We start off with the global economy, as the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development has raised its 2025 global growth forecast to 3.2%, up from June's 2.9% projection, while maintaining its 2026 outlook at 2.9%. The organization reported that U.S. import tariffs have reached 19.5%, the highest level since 1933, though their full economic impact remains pending as companies work through pre-tariff inventories. The U.S. economy is expected to slow to 1.8% growth in 2025, while China continues to face domestic challenges despite policy support. The OECD cautions that sustained trade barriers could further dampen investment and consumption globally.
The expected decline in global growth over 2024 to 2026 in part reflects high trade barriers and policy uncertainty, which are set to continue holding back business investment and trade. Inflation is projected to decline in most G20 economies as growth and labor markets moderate. We project headline inflation across the G20 to decline from 6.2% last year to 3.4% this year and 2.9% next year. One exception is the United States, where we expect tariffs to push inflation up from 2.5% last year to 2.7% this year and 3% next year.
We're moving on to Europe. Starting October 12th, the European Union will introduce its entry-exit system, the EES, a new digital border control for non-EU travellers, including UK residents, using the Eurotunnel. The system requires travellers to scan passports, provide fingerprints, and have their photo taken, replacing traditional passport stamping. Eurotunnel CEO Jan Lorich assured that the phased 6-month rollouts will prevent delays and confusion, with traveller guided through quick biometric kiosks and just opposed UK border points like Folkestone and Dover. Emphasised the smooth transition backed by extensive testing and cooperation with authorities. Indonesia and the European Union have finalized a comprehensive economic partnership agreement, concluding 9 years of negotiations with a deal designed to significantly boost trade and investment flows. The deal will eliminate nearly all tariffs on EU exports to Indonesia and grant 90% of Indonesian goods duty-free access to the EU market. The agreement is expected to save EU partners €600 million annually in duties and boost Indonesian shipments of key products like palm oil, coffee and textiles. Both sides anticipate trade between them could double within 5 years of implementation. A finance ministry report has shown that Germany's federal and state tax revenues increased by 2% year-on-year in August, reaching €63.2 billion. The report noted that leading indicators do not point to significant short-term acceleration in economic momentum. This follows a contraction in Europe's largest economy for the second consecutive year in 2024. For the first 8 months of the year, cumulative tax revenues rose 6.8% to 576.5 million euros. Looking ahead, official forecasts predict a 3.7% increase in revenues for all of 2025. Chancellor Friedrich Merz has declared that Germany faces its most severe economic challenges and called for urgent reforms to sustain the welfare system and revive key industries. His address to Parliament coincided with a surprise drop in business morale as the IFO Institute's Business Climate Index fell to 87.7 in September. Merz highlighted growing concerns among business leaders and unions about the country's economic future, citing weakened conditions across most sectors. Germany's economy contracted by 0.3% in the second quarter, partly due to slowed U.S. demand amid tariff uncertainties. The Chancellor also emphasized the need for national unity, criticizing divisive rhetoric seen in other democracies. IFO Institute President Clemens Fust has said Germany's economy faces growing pressure as the service sector declines, driven by falling demand in industry-related areas like transport and logistics. Fust pointed to weakening industrial orders and exports and warned that government special funds are being misused, with little reaching real investment. He also urged immediate pension and healthcare reforms, saying political hesitation is blocking necessary action. While civil engineering remains strong, modest gains are expected in construction and IT if funds are redirected to infrastructure and digital projects. The Kremlin has warned that allowing the new START nuclear treaty with the United States to expire in February would pose significant risks to international security. President Vladimir Putin has proposed both sides adhere to the treaty's limits for another year, which the White House called pretty good. The treaty caps deployed nuclear warheads at 1,550 for each country. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said failure to extend it could leave the world without any bilateral nuclear agreement, calling the situation fraught with great dangers. Russia's finance ministry has proposed raising the value-added tax to 22% from 20% starting in 2025. The increase is aimed at funding military operations as the conflict in Ukraine continues. The proposal comes as Russia's economic growth is expected to slow to 1% this year, down from 4.3% in 2024. The tax hike is projected to generate about 1 trillion rubles in additional revenues, primarily for defense and security needs. The move has drawn criticism from U.S. President Donald Trump, who called Russia's paper tiger and said the country is in big economic trouble. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov dismissed the comments, asserting that Russia's economy has adapted to wartime conditions. Swedish economist Anna Brimman has been named the new governor of the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, the RBNZ, marking the first time a woman will hold the post. Brimman, who currently serves as first deputy governor of Sweden's Riksbank, brings both academic and financial sector experience, having also held the position of group chief economist at Swedbank. She will begin her 5-year term on December 1st at the press conference. Brimman pledged to focus on the RBNZ's core mandate.
And has previously been group chief economist at Swedbank, a leading Swedish commercial bank.
Australian consumer inflation accelerated to 3% annually in August, up from 2.8% in July and exceeding forecasts. The stronger than expected reading led markets to scale back bets on near-term interest rates cuts, with the probability of a November reduction falling to 50%. The data showed persistent price pressures in services such as restaurants, meals and housing. Several major banks abandoned their predictions for a November rate cut following the report, with unemployment low at 4.2%. Analysts now expect the Reserve Bank of Australia to hold rates steady at 3.6% until at least mid-2025. China has reaffirmed its commitment to the multilateral trading system and World Trade Organization reform. At a press briefing, Commerce Ministry official Han Yung stated China will oppose unilateralism, update WTO rules and focus on development outcomes at the next WTO Ministerial Conference. The announcement follows Premier Li Qiang's earlier statement that China will not seek new special treatment in the World Trade Organization negotiations. These positions aim to boost confidence in global trade cooperation amid current economic challenges. Head of the National Financial Regulatory Administration, Li Yuns, has revealed that China's banking and insurance sectors have funneled 170 trillion yuan into the real economy over the past 5 years. The funds were directed through loans, bonds, and equity investments. Li noted that lending to key sectors saw rapid growth, with loans for scientific research, manufacturing and infrastructure construction increasing at average annual rates of 27.2%, 21.7% and 10.1% respectively. The period also saw a major expansion on inclusive finance. The balance of loans to small and micro enterprises doubled, while insurance payouts rose by 61.7% compared to the previous 5-year plan. Official data has shown that China's consumer market maintained steady growth in August, supported by strong commodity sales and a vibrant services sector. Sales of tablets, smart air conditioners, mobile phone rose by 20.7%, 17.7% and 8.2% respectively. Service consumption remained vibrant, with summer travel boosting tourism and leisure activities. The film industry saw box office revenue reach 11.97 billion yuan, up 2.8% year-on-year. New energy vehicle sales increased 7.5%, while duty-free shopping surged 97.5% in the first 8 months of the year. Still in China, the National Energy Administration has shown China's electricity consumption rose 5% year-on-year to in August to 1.0154 trillion kilowatt hours, staying above the 1 trillion kilowatt hours per hour mark for the second consecutive month. Manufacturing sector power use grew 5.5%, the fastest pace this year, with steel, building materials and chemicals showing strong recovery. Household and services sector consumption also increased due to prolonged hot weather. The world's first China-Europe Arctic container route officially launched Tuesday from Ningbo Shushan ports, with a cargo ship departing for Britain's Felixstowe port. The new route cuts transit time to just 18 days, significantly faster than traditional routes. The inaugural shipment carries over 1,000 containers with goods valued at $190 million. The aquatic route reduces sailing time by more than 50% and offers a lower carbon alternative under China's Ice Silk Road initiative. The vessel is scheduled to arrive in Felixstowe on October 10th. For further analysis, we are joined from Hong Kong by economist Benny Kwok. Mr. Kwok, good evening
Hello.
to you and welcome to our Economic Bulletin. Let me start here by asking, beyond being faster, how significant is the Ice Silk Road as a strategic alternative to traditional maritime choke points, especially in the current geopolitical climate?
Hello, thank you for inviting me. So apparently, this new route for China is to try to find a new way for having the China-Europe trading road other than the Suez Canal and also the Cape of the Good Hope. Two routes, because of the two routes. The Suez Canal is the major one, but it has to bypass a lot of so-called choke points that is controlled by the U.S. military. And for the Cape of the Good Hope, it would be too far away. It would be too costly for China doing trade with Europe. So that's why, because of the Arctic, the ocean is now, the ice level is going to break down. So that's why China would like to make use of these shorter routes to do trade with Europe. But of course, these actions from China, it would raise the alertness from the United States, of course, because the United States put the Arctic Ocean is going to be the next focus for its national security as well. Because so that's why I would say the Washington is watching closely whether China is going to make use of the new Arctic route to do trade with Europe.
Now, how scalable is this Arctic route? And what are the main logistical and environmental challenges that could limit its use to a seasonal or niche service rather than a mainstream shipping lane?
Because this route is much shorter, but for China they need to bring the so-called icebreaker ships, so that to take the leading the fleets, so that because the fleets cannot just break the ice easily, but they need the icebreaker. So that's why I would say the volumes of the goods that could be transported through these routes is still very limited compared to now the current Suez Canal and also maybe the Cape of the Good Hope route. But I would say China is doing some trial at this moment and also sending a message to the world that is, okay, China now is trying to develop a new route, is trying to test the actions and also the reactions from the Washington. So I would say whether this route could bring the really a certain amount of volumes of goods or trade between China and Europe is not really the first priority. The priority and also the main actions for China is to test whether the Washington would have any actions or reactions for this Arctic route, because China is also the observer member of the Arctic Council, and this Arctic Council is most of them are the NATO members, and also including Russia. So I would say whether China's actions in the Arctic oceans, I would say it would depend on the China-Russia relations in the coming years. and I would say the Russia in the coming years, because of the Russian-Ukraine war, Russia would depend a lot on the finance and economy from China. So China's presence in the Arctic Ocean maybe have a bigger role, I would say, in the future, and it could be used by the Russia and China as well to try to counterbalance or influence from the United States and the Western nations.
Now, the 170 trillion yuan injection into the real economy is an enormous sum. Now, how effective has this directed credit been in achieving its policy goals, such as upgrading manufacturing, boosting self-reliance in technology, versus potentially adding to debt burdens?
Hello, can you repeat the questions because of the connection problems? Can you repeat the whole questions? Sorry.
Yes. Let me here start. Now, there is a 170 trillion yuan that have been injected into the real economy. And this is an enormous sum. Now, how effective has this directed the credit been in achieving its policy goals? For an instance, upgrading manufacturing, boosting self-reliance in technology, definitely that versus potentially adding to the debt burdens. So what do you think here?
Okay, first of all, the debt, the problem, yes, China is also suffering a huge debt problem. But remember, the renminbi or the Chinese yuan is not really freely trade around the world. So that means the so-called debt problem, it could be easily canceled by certain financial tools by Beijing as well, because whether the state enterprises, whether the so-called the big companies are also under very strictly controlled or strictly supervised by Beijing. So that's why that means that Beijing can print money easily. Beijing can cancel the so-called debt easily, but of course it can make use of a
So you think, Mr. Kwok, Mr. Kwok, here that sum, that enormous sum, would enable China to in achieving its policy goals?
Okay. Yes, I would say yes. What do I mean? Yes, that is because you're seeing China is trying to upgrade its industrial industries. That is try to shift the focus. In the past, that is to try to boom up the property market, and now the property market is already dead already. And now China is focusing and putting a lot of money on the so-called AI, so-called the semiconductors, and try to first, of course, is to match with the pace of the United States, and also to try to export its so-called, second best qualities, to try to export this kind of AI and the high tech and the semiconductor products to the developing countries,
right,
or to some countries that could not afford the Western technologies. So I would say yes. Beijing, it could be effective to putting a lot of money on pulling up and to cherry-picking this kind of industry, because these industries need a lot of money, and only China, other than the United States,
very clear,
could have the financial power to do so.
Very clear, Ms. Kwok. And from Hong Kong, that was economic researcher Benny Kwok. We thank you so much for your insights here. And back to our news. In Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party leadership, hopeful emphasized the economic challenges in the debate in Tokyo. Fellow frontrunner Shinjiro Koizumi highlighted the urgent need to address inflation, pledging to increase wages by 1 million yen through tax reforms, investment, and productivity boosts. He also promised support for sectors like healthcare and education to ease costs pressures. Right-wing frontrunner Senai Takishi acknowledged inflation's impacts, attributing rising prices mainly to import costs, and called for household support and productivity investments to shift inflation towards wage-driven growth. The candidates' economic plans come amid growing public concern over rising prices as Japan prepares for its October leadership vote. Russia and Iran have signed a memorandum of understanding to cooperate on building small nuclear power plants in Iran. According to Russian nuclear agency Rostom, which called the initiative strategic project, Tehran aims to boost nuclear capacity to 20 gigawatt by 2040. Iran currently operates only one nuclear power plant built by Russia in Bushehr, with a capacity of around 1 gigawatt. Iran's oil minister Mohsen Paknejad has said that potential UN sanctions set to be reimposed under a snapback mechanism would not significantly impact Iran's oil exports, especially to China. Speaking in Tehran, Paknejad noted Iran has long operated under heavy US sanctions and is prepared to adopt if needed. His remarks come as European powers and Iran scramble to reach a deal before the September 27th deadline to avoid renewed UN measures over Iran's nuclear program. China currently buys nearly 80% of Iran's oil exports, a trade likely to continue even under increased pressure. Indian Trade Minister Piyush Goyal has said that India plans to increase energy trade with the US, including in nuclear power, despite recent tariff disputes. Speaking at US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, Goyal highlighted India's commitment to doubling its nuclear power capacity and collaborating on innovation small modular reactor. He also emphasized India's strong talent pool and vibrant startup ecosystem, urging the US to support Indian engineers and graduates amid new US visa fees and trade tensions. The comments come after US tariffs on Indian goods were imposed following India's continued Russian oil imports, with ongoing talks between US and Indian leaders aiming to ease trade barriers. Oil prices rose over 1% on Wednesday as an industry report showed U.S. crude inventories declined last week, adding to a sense in the market of tightening supplies amid export issues in Kurdistan and Venezuela and disruptions to Russian supplies. When futures were up 1.4% to $68.6 a barrel. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures were up 1.6% to $64.4. A spokesperson for Morgan Stanley has announced that the firm will introduce cryptocurrency trading on its e-trade platform in the first half of 2026 through a partnership with infrastructure provider Zero Hash. Initially, e-trade clients will be able to trade Bitcoin, Ether and Solana. The move signals continued Wall Street adoption of digital assets, particularly under the Trump administration's supportive regulatory stance. The cryptocurrency market is currently valued at approximately $3.9 trillion. Separately, Zero Hush confirmed it reached Unicom status after a $104 million funding round led by Interactive Brokers with participation from Morgan Stanley and others. That brings us to the end of our economic bulletin. Here is what we've been covering. OECD raises 2025 global growth forecast to 3.2%. Russia proposes VAT hike to 22% to fund military spending. And Russia-Iran sign nuclear power plant cooperation deal. This concludes our economic bulletin. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Qnews EGY to stay informed. Many thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.